Hi, Fresh SLP friends. I hope you've enjoyed this series. This has been the series of a day in the life of a school-based SLP. Now, I'm not a school-based SLP, and I've invited my friend and partner in podcasting, Katie Widestrom-Landgra. She has been your host. But this is our final dedicated episode in this series. We started the series, and we're going to finish the series together. And we are going to unpack our favorite moments from the series, some of our favorite quotes, some of our aha moments as we go back and look over each and every one of these, I think 13 or 14 episodes in this series. We are striving to just shed light in our field on what SLPs can do. And so if you're a med-based SLP and thinking of stepping into the schools, this series is for you. If you're a school-based SLP and want to know more about what's out there, this episode series is for you. So welcome, enjoy this last dedicated episode of a day in the life of a school-based SLP. So welcome to this episode of The Missing Link for SLPs. I am here, and I'm not going to cry, but this is a very special episode for me. I'm here with Katie Widestrom-Landgra.
Hi, Mattie.
It's you and me again.
I have to tell you, it feels a little bittersweet.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad we're doing this because I had a student reach out to me today, and she's like, I love a day in the life of a school-based SLP, because she's one of those graduate students who's like, I want to work with kids. I want to work in the schools. This is what I want to do. And she's like, I had no clue about some of these things that happened as a school-based SLP. So, Katie, we are making a difference.
Oh, that's so good to hear. At least she has some clues now. I think some days I still don't have a clue. And here we are 21 years later.
We could do this again a year down the road. Different guests, different questions.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
So are you ready to start our final episode where we unpack kind of what we just went through?
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay. First question. When I first asked you to do this podcast, what did you expect? Now, I asked you to come on as the host because I'm not a school-based SLP, and I thought you'd be great, and you have been. But what did you expect?
I was thinking that I would run out of things to talk about with people. I was expecting to feel like I had a pretty good idea already. It turns out I was incorrect. And I could have talked to another dozen SLPs across this country who work in the schools. Mm-hmm. And I would have kept learning new and different and amazing things about the nuances within our profession in this particular setting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say, when you first asked me, I wasn't sure because I don't know anything about hosting podcasts, and I wasn't sure if I would do these amazing colleagues service, and I hope that happened.
I think you've done a beautiful job pulling the questions out and really getting to the heart of the conversations. What surprised me most, and what I guess I was expecting to, because I'm managing it on the back end, right? So I thought, my headphones will be on, I'll do the intro, I'll do the outro, and then I'll be there for the conversation. And then I'll give you the warning when the time's coming up. I did not expect to be so involved in the conversations that you had. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. If I had known these things earlier, I might have been a school-based SLP. There's some really cool things about being a school-based SLP. And I think that was something that I wasn't expecting. I expected to do the technical part. I loved the conversations that you had. I think you did a beautiful job.
Thanks, Mattie. Thanks. So when you're thinking about some of those episodes or those moments that pulled you in, that made you kind of stop everything else that you were doing and focus on these conversations instead, what were some highlights for you? Does anything come to mind?
Oh, that's a good question. My favorite highlights were, I believe that I am a heart-led med SLP. I love the left brain. I love intensive care. I love swallow studies. I love all of those things. And I also love the fulfillment that I get from helping people that I do. And I so loved when I heard some of the guests say, I think every guest said, I love what I do as a school-based SLP. And I was really happy to have that same thought that it doesn't matter where we are, but we enjoy where we are working in our field and helping who we're working with.
Yeah.
How about you? What was some highlights for you?
Wow. I know we have a time limit. So I think I would echo first what you talked about, the love of the work and that special connection that SLPs have with the students and families they serve and the colleagues that they work with. There was an authenticity that was through every episode, and it was affirming for me to hear so many folks from all different parts of the country and from all of these different settings singing from the same songbook. We love this job and continue to do this job for those connections. So that was pretty great. Some other highlights, there were some really important, like, golden nuggets of wisdom that would show up in different episodes that, as an SLP who's worked in the schools now for over 20 years, I have thought about for weeks after the episode. And so I encourage people to spend some time listening to the different episodes and see what is an important takeaway for you. It could be something different if this is not a setting you've ever worked in. For me, I have this small kind of list of things in my mind that just stayed with me and will stay with me long after this podcast is through.
We did a summary document where we pulled the quotes from all of the primary quotes from all of the guests. And I'm going to go over that on the very next episode. But I just loved authenticity, I think was a word you used. It's not all roses and sunshine. We had some real conversations in here as well.
And I appreciated that, because I think maybe a little bit of a fear of mine was that whether we intended to or not, we might paint this particular setting and experience as roses and sunshine, because we do love the connection with kids, and the workload can be tremendous. And we sometimes really have to work hard to have boundaries with our time and with our energy. And so what I think is interesting is that all of those things can be true. And I appreciated that came through with this series.
And the guests were all, yes, these are challenges, and we are doing this to rise above those challenges or make a difference in our field, or they're finding ways to battle those challenges. And this episode, I felt, banded us together in some of those challenges.
Absolutely. Yep.
Was there anything that surprised you?
I would say there are things that delighted me. And I think one of the things that surprised and delighted me was that we had so many folks who loved this profession so much that they took their work out of their day job and channeled that passion into other activities, TPT stores, and creating your own business. I loved hearing from people that had so much passion about a particular practice area or a particular skill set they wanted to help develop with students. Or maybe it was a tool that helped with workload efficiencies, and that we have so many amazing colleagues that are willing to share their time and their talents in innovative and creative ways. Wow, that was surprising and delightful.
Hmm. It surprised me that I was kind of saddened to hear of the workload, the burnout, the oh my gosh, all that school-based SLPs are sometimes asked to do. So sometimes I felt that some of that work that was taking place outside was a necessity.
Mhm.
But what a way to make lemonade out of lemons, you know? There's a
Yeah.
lot of creatives out there who were really working to tailor the materials that they were creating for those that they were working with in their day-to-day, school-based setting. But I was surprised at the weight that sometimes school-based SLPs have to work under. I didn't have as great of an appreciation of that. And I was also really surprised. And this is maybe one of the reasons why I love these conversations. I love the Venn diagram of, we've got the school-based SLP and the med-based SLP. And prior to the episode for me, the diagram where it met in the middle was a little smaller of a sliver. And through this episode, these series, I learned we have so much more in common than we have that's not in common. And so that was a surprise for me. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Oh, so knowing that our experiences shape how we filter information, what resonated with you as a listener who's currently working in the medical setting?
Good question. Working in a medical setting, outpatient peds clinic, I have learned, and I've reached out to school-based SLPs, and they've reached out to me for my evals. I get their IEPs and things like that. I guess understanding how much more we really have in common, and that we really are. I mean, of course, we know we're working towards, the same goals, same clients and everything else like that. But that filter, it just, do you ever play that little game where you've got the little marbles on the top and the big holes, and then you shake it and the marbles just filter all down all the way through those holes until you get the tiniest marbles on the bottom?
Yes.
That's kind of what this episode was like for me. I had these big marbles on the top of this is what I do with a pediatric client, patient in a med-based SLP. And all of the things that I learned in this episode was how the school-based SLP and the med-based SLP, we really can be so much more on the same page than I ever realized. And so those marbles just filtered right on down through. And I have so much to take away from this. So same question, let's flip it for you. As a school-based SLP who had the opportunity to engage in these conversations, what resonated with you?
So there were things that came up time and time again. As I mentioned before, people love the connection they make with students and families and colleagues. There were also some things that came up time and time again that were really challenging. Building a schedule as a school-based SLP is painful and it's exhausting, and your ability to maneuver and adapt and to be flexible can really tax the system. And I so appreciated feeling like I was not alone. I would tell folks who are practicing school-based SLPs, if you get nothing else from this series, listen to it to know that there are a whole lot of us who are in the same boat and who have some similar experiences. I think even when you work in a larger school, there are only a few of you at most. And oftentimes you're on your own in a particular building. And what really resonated with me is that episode after episode, conversation after conversation, I was reminded that I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's excellent.
So, I feel like we did a pretty great job of talking with lots of people in lots of different um, settings with different experiences. But were there topics that you wished we had explored more deeply if given more time?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
okay.
Yes. I love being a disruptor. I would love to make a difference in this field, whether it's med-based, school-based, private practice, whatever, and just bring more visibility, more validation, more power, more recognition, more whatever to those of us who are working in the trenches and have more value to what we do. We are good at what we do and we make a difference. And I would love to explore more conversations along those lines. And it's wonderful that we do things for the schools we work with, the children we work with, for ourselves. And I would like to see some of those conversations go further, deeper, rather than clicking off the podcast recording and then we go about our day. So I would love to see where some of these conversations could go a little bit more deeper and how we really could make a change. How about you?
Yeah, I would love to learn more from folks who have been able to create and maintain a work-life balance within this setting. And that is selfishly what I would like, because I don't personally always have that. And so when I would hear guests talking about how they establish boundaries and the things they would put into place uh, within a daily schedule to have some time to recharge before they saw their students in the afternoon. Guests who were able to effectively advocate for more manageable workload and caseload. I would have loved to acquired tools and strategies, almost like this repository of resources, so that when a person is in a situation where something's out of whack, where that work-life balance isn't there, they have some go-to options to try to make that situation different and hopefully better.
How could we do that? I love the idea. How could we do that?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer just yet, but I like the idea of it.
It's a good idea. I know in a few months, we're going to be doing a mental health series with some SLPs, and we can certainly target some of those discussions there. Burnout's real. And there's such a need for SLPs. There always will be. And we need to take care of ourselves.
Right.
Collectively.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up the series, what are your thoughts about where we've ended up?
I think we're bringing closure to this series in a great place. I think we've had a lot of different perspectives. I don't know if we ever end. I think it creates an opportunity to think about the next place we go, the additional questions we might have. What I would love is if, as listeners are processing these different episodes and as they're hearing from all of our different guests, what are the questions that come up for them? What do they feel would be sort of the wish list of next places we go with the conversation? I so enjoy the idea of that interaction between our listeners and the series, and having that inform what we do next. So I guess that phrase ended up. I'm delighted with where we ended up, and I also think it creates the inspiration for where we may go next.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Hearing back from listeners and other people who come to the Fresh SLP website or wherever we go and talk, just having more of those conversations, because when those communication exchanges are happening, hopefully growth is happening. That's a good thing. I'm pleased with where we've ended up as well.
Mhm.
I'm very pleased you did this podcast recording, this series as hosting it, because it's not something I could have done. Do you have any words of wisdom now at the end of the podcast for somebody stepping into a school-based SLP position?
Wow. Okay, that's a little bit of a surprise. Because I would ask guests that question fairly frequently.
You're my guest.
Okay, when you do feel bogged down by the paperwork, or if you feel overwhelmed by the emails you have to return and the phone calls you have to place to parents, take a moment and remember what you love about what you do. And if you happen to forget, see some kids and you'll remember almost instantly. It has worked every single time in 20 some years when I start to just feel despondent and like bummed out and like, oh, another billing. Are you kidding me? I thought I just made a schedule. What? I'm using up erasers because I have to move things around. When I start to kind of get stuck in the gunk of what's happening, because that's there too, I work with kids and then I remember, oh, right. This is why I'm here. This is what we're doing.
And
If
find
in
that
doubt, see the kids.
doubt, see the kids.
Yeah.
One of the funny things I remember, it was before we began recording, you were talking with a guest, and the moment the guest came on, the two of you were off and running and laughing about what it's like working in a high school, because you're in a high school. And one of the things you said, yes, and those kids smell. So I guess go find those kids, but don't get too close to them.
To be fair, I think I was saying middle school SLPs have a harder job than I do in a high school because, yeah, I mean, it's not that kids aren't trying, but there's a lot of systems in process and things changing. Yeah, a little rough sometimes.
But go look at them, go watch and remember why. If I would have words of wisdom, it would be go find your joy. And if you've lost your joy, then change something, figure something out.
Yes. Yep. And sometimes your joy isn't lost. Sometimes it's just misplaced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's the same in the med SLP system. They can be long days. They can be hard days, but I love what I do most of the time. And I also find one bright spot every day. There's something, one highlight of every day. And then when I'm done at the end of my day, I let go.
So, Mattie, how do you let go of the day? I know we kind of segued into your words of wisdom, but I love the idea of putting the day away. How do you let go of the day?
Good question. I love being organized. And so my desk area is organized. And so at the end of my day, everything is put back in its place. The files are closed. Everything's where it needs to be. And it's prepped for the next day that I'm going to be there. And then I kind of go through this mental shutdown where all of these things are done. And we have this wonderful thing at the hospital where it's like a meditation prayer. And it's like, I have done my best because, people die in our setting. I've done my best. I've given my best. And I let go at the end of the day. So I make sure that I'm done. My I's are dotted, my T's are crossed. And then I discipline my thinking. So when I walk by that meditation that's on the right side of the door as I leave, then that's where everything stays. And I go out into the car. Usually I'll call somebody on my way out of the hospital, because that takes me back into my other world. How about you?
Oh, how do I leave the day? Still working on it. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't.
Is it harder as a school-based SLP? Do you guys bring more stuff home?
Some days, yes. But if you listen to the series, you will find that's not always the case. So you can learn from folks who don't always do that too. So for me personally, sometimes yes. I think for me, when I don't have all the things crossed off of the to-do list, I will say, it'll be there. This day's done and it'll be there. But it doesn't always create the closure that I intend. So, work in progress.
That might be a difference between the two settings. In the Med SLP setting, we have to get our charts done at the end of the day. Charts and charting, charges and everything. That's got to be done. Interesting point.
Yeah. Oh, Mattie, what do we do? I mean, here we are. 12 episodes? 13 episodes later?
I think it was 13. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good run.
It is. It's a lucky, lucky, lucky run. This has been such a joy. Thank you very, very, very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I so appreciated it.
So that is the end of our Day in the Life of a School-Based SLP series. I so hope you have enjoyed this series as much as I have. We've unpacked so many things about what a school-based SLP does. But if you have more questions, you have more answers, you want to be a guest on the show, reach out to us at freshsslp.com. Find us on Instagram at freshslp. Like, follow, subscribe. We are having fun here. If you have any ideas, reach back and let us know, and please share. Have a great day, my fresh friends.